They told me I was useless. Not strangers, not bullies at school, my own family. The people who were supposed to believe in me looked at me like I was nothing more than a burden they had to carry. My father said it first during dinner one cold November evening when I was 17. He didn't even look up from his plate when the word left his mouth. Useless. Just like that. As if he was commenting on the weather. My mother didn't defend me. She just stared at her hands folded on her lap, silent, complicit. My older brother laughed, actually laughed. And in that moment, something inside me shattered into 1,000 pieces I didn't know how to put back together. I'm Daniel. I grew up in a small town in Ohio where everyone knew everyone, and reputations were built on success, money, and status. My family wasn't rich, but they were respected. My father owned a construction business. My brother was the golden child, a college football star with a full scholarship and a future everyone could see. And then there was me, the quiet one, the one who liked to draw instead of play sports, the one who spent hours in his room sketching buildings and bridges instead of going to parties or chasing girls. The disappointment. They didn't just call me useless once. It became a label, a definition. Every time I failed a test, every time I didn't make the team, every time I chose to stay home instead of being social, it was confirmation to them that I wasn't worth much. My father would shake his head and say things like, "What are we going to do with you, Daniel?" My mother would sigh heavily, like my existence was exhausting. My brother would mock me in front of his friends, calling me the artist, saying it like it was an insult, like creating something with your hands was weakness. But the worst part wasn't the words. It was the look in their eyes. Disappointment so deep it felt like disgust, like they had given up on me before I even had a chance to figure out who I was. I started believing them. I started thinking, maybe they were right. Maybe I was useless. Maybe I didn't have what it took to make something of myself. I stopped drawing for a while. I stopped dreaming. So I just existed, moving through days like a ghost in my own life, waiting for something I couldn't even name. High school ended, and I didn't go to college. I couldn't afford it, and my grades weren't good enough for scholarships. My father refused to help. He said he wasn't going to waste money on someone who didn't have ambition. So I got a job at a warehouse, lifting boxes, packing orders, doing work that made my body ache and my mind numb. My brother was finishing his degree. My parents were proud. I was just the son they didn't talk about at family gatherings. But something strange started happening during those long, exhausting shifts at the warehouse. I started thinking again, not about how worthless I was, but about what I actually wanted. I remembered the sketches I used to make, the buildings I used to imagine. I remembered the feeling of creating something from nothing, of seeing an idea become real on paper. And I realized something that terrified and excited me at the same time. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life being defined by their words. I didn't want to be useless. I wanted to prove them wrong, not for them, for me. I started drawing again in secret. Late at night after my shifts, I would sit at my tiny desk in my cramped apartment and sketch. Buildings, bridges, spaces that felt alive. I didn't tell anyone, not my family, not my co-workers. It was mine, my quiet rebellion. My silent promise to myself that I was more than what they said I was. I didn't know where it would lead, I didn't have a plan, but I had something I hadn't felt in years, hope and anger. The kind of anger that doesn't destroy you, the kind that fuels you, that makes you want to rise just to show the world they were wrong about you. That was the beginning, the moment I stopped accepting their version of who I was and started creating my own. The humiliation didn't stop when I moved out. If anything, it got worse because now I had given them proof that I was exactly what they always said I was. A failure living in a rundown apartment, working a dead-end job, going nowhere. My brother got married that spring. Big wedding. Everyone was there. Relatives I hadn't seen in years, family, friends, people from the community. I almost didn't go. I knew what it would be like. But my mother called and guilt-tripped me into showing up. She said it would look bad if I wasn't there. Not that she wanted me there, just that my absence would reflect poorly on them. I wore the only suit I owned, a cheap one I bought at a thrift store for a job interview I never got. It didn't fit right. The sleeves were too long and the shoulders too tight. I felt like an imposter the moment I walked into that venue. Everyone looked polished, successful, put together, and then there was me. I tried to stay invisible, lurking near the back, avoiding conversations. But my uncle found me. Uncle Richard. He was drunk, loud, the kind of man who thought his opinions were facts and his jokes were funny, even when they cut deep. He looked me up and down with this smirk on his face and said loud enough for people around us to hear, "So Daniel, still stacking boxes for a living?" I forced a smile, tried to laugh it off, said something about it being temporary. He laughed harder. "Temporary? Kid, you've been doing that for what, 3 years now? When are you going to get a real job? Do something with your life like your brother." People were staring. I could feel their eyes on me, their judgment. I mumbled something and tried to walk away, but he wasn't done. He grabbed my shoulder, still laughing, and said, "You know what your problem is? You got no drive, no ambition. You're just coasting through life hoping something will fall into your lap. That's not how the world works, son. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me whole. But what hurt more than his words was the silence around us. No one defended me. No one told him to stop. My father was standing just a few feet away. He heard everything, and he said nothing. He just looked at me with that same disappointed expression I had seen my entire life, shook his head slightly, and turned away. That moment broke something in me that I didn't even know was still intact. I left the wedding early, didn't say goodbye to anyone, just walked out into the parking lot, sat in my beat-up car, and stared at the steering wheel for I don't know how long. I felt like I was suffocating, like every breath was a reminder that I didn't belong anywhere, not even in my own family. The worst part was that a small part of me believed what my uncle said, that maybe I was just coasting, that maybe I didn't have what it took to be more than this. When I got home that night, I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. I looked tired, beaten down, older than my 23 years, and I thought about all the times I had been called useless, all the times I'd been made to feel small, all the moments I had swallowed my pride and accepted their version of who I was. I thought about my drawings hidden in a folder under my bed, dreams I was too afraid to chase because what if I failed? What if I tried and still ended up being exactly what they said I was? But then something shifted. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was just that I had nothing left to lose. I pulled out that folder. I looked at my sketches, really looked at them, and I saw something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. They were good. Not perfect, not professional. But they had potential. They had life. They were proof that I could create something, that I had a vision, that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't useless after all. I made a decision that night, a quiet, desperate, terrifying decision. I was going to teach myself architecture. Not because I thought I could actually become an architect without a degree, without connections, without money, but because I needed to prove to myself that I could do something hard, that I could build something from nothing, that I could be more than what they believed. I didn't tell anyone. This wasn't for them, this was for me, my secret war against every word that had ever tried to define me. I started spending every free moment learning. I bought used textbooks from online marketplaces. I watched free lectures on YouTube. I studied buildings in my town, taking photos, sketching details, analyzing structures. I worked my warehouse shifts and came home exhausted, but I forced myself to study anyway. Some nights I only got 3 or 4 hours of sleep. My body ached, my eyes burned, but something inside me had ignited. A fire I didn't know I had. I wasn't just learning architecture. I was rebuilding myself, one sketch at a time. One lesson at a time, one small victory at a time, and no one knew, no one saw. I was invisible to them, but I was becoming visible to myself. 2 years passed like that. 2 years of silence. 2 years of working myself to exhaustion during the day and studying until my eyes couldn't focus at night. 2 years of building something in secret while everyone around me still saw the same useless Daniel they had always known. I didn't go to family gatherings anymore. I made excuses, said I was busy with work. They didn't push. I think they were relieved not to have me there, a reminder of what failure looked like in a family that valued success above everything else. But something was changing inside me. The more I learned, the more confident I became. Not loud confidence, not the kind that announces itself, but quiet certainty, the kind that grows in the dark when no one is watching. I started creating full architectural designs, not just sketches anymore, complete plans, buildings that existed only in my imagination but felt real on paper. I designed a community center for a neighborhood that needed one. I redesigned the library in my town, imagining what it could be if someone cared enough to make it beautiful and functional. I created a portfolio, a real one. 50 pages of work that represented hundreds of hours of learning, failing, trying again. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I didn't have a degree, I didn't have experience, I didn't have connections. But I had this. Proof that I had taught myself something valuable. Proof that I wasn't useless. And then something happened that I didn't expect. My town announced a competition. They were looking for design proposals for a new public park. It was open to everyone. Students, professionals, amateurs, anyone could submit. The winner would receive a contract to work with the city's planning department and see their design come to life. When I saw that announcement, my hands were shaking. This was it. This was the moment I had been preparing for without even knowing it. But the fear was overwhelming. What if I submitted and they laughed at my work? What if I proved everyone right that I was just a warehouse worker with delusions of being something more? What if I failed publicly and gave my family one more reason to shake their heads at me? I almost didn't do it. I almost let fear win. But then I remembered that wedding. I remembered my uncle's words. I remembered my father turning away. I remembered every moment I had been made to feel small. And I realized something that changed everything. I had already failed in their eyes. I had already been rejected, dismissed, labeled. I had nothing to lose because they had already taken everything from me except one thing, my ability to choose what I did next. So I submitted my design. I didn't tell anyone, not my co-workers, not my family. I just printed my portfolio, filled out the application, and dropped it off at City Hall with my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. Then I waited. And waiting was torture. Weeks passed. I tried not to think about it. I went to work, I came home, I kept studying because that's what I did now. Learning was my armor against a world that had tried to break me. And then one afternoon, I got a call. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. A woman's voice. Professional, kind. She said her name was Margaret Chen, and she was with the city planning department. She said they had reviewed my submission. My heart stopped. I was sure she was calling to let me down gently, to tell me thanks but no thanks, but then she said something I will never forget as long as I live. She said, "Daniel, your design is extraordinary." We were blown away by the detail, the creativity, the understanding of what this community needs. You've created something that isn't just beautiful, it's meaningful. We want to offer you the contract. We want to build your park. I couldn't speak. Literally couldn't form words. She asked if I was still there. I managed to say yes. She asked if I was interested. I said yes again. My voice was shaking. She laughed warmly and said they would send over the details, and they looked forward to working with me. When I hung up, I just stood there in my tiny apartment, staring at nothing, trying to process what had just happened. I had won. Me, Daniel, the useless one, the disappointment, the one with no degree, no connections, no support. I had beaten professionals, students from architecture programs, people with every advantage I didn't have, and I had done it alone. With nothing but determination and refusal to accept the story they had written for me. I should have felt pure joy, and I did. But there was something else too, something darker, anger, not the destructive kind, the focused kind, because now I had proof. Proof that they were wrong, proof that every time they called me useless, every time they dismissed my dreams, every time they made me feel worthless, they were wrong. And I was about to show them just how wrong they were. I didn't call them right away. I waited. I wanted to see it first. I wanted to watch my design become real. Over the next 6 months, I worked with the city planning department. They paid me. actual money for my ideas, my work. I quit the warehouse job. I became a consultant on my own project. I watched as my drawings transformed into something physical, into concrete and steel and wood, into benches where people would sit, into pathways where children would run, into a space that would exist long after I was gone, my mark on the world, proof that I was here, that I mattered, that I was never useless. They just couldn't see what I was capable of because they never bothered to look. The park opened on a Saturday in October. The entire town showed up. There were news crews, photographers, local politicians giving speeches about community and progress. The mayor stood at a podium in front of a crowd of hundreds and talked about the vision behind the project, about how important public spaces are, about bringing people together. And then she said something that made time stop. She said the park was designed by a local resident, someone who had never studied architecture formally, but had the talent and dedication to create something truly special. She said my name, Daniel Morrison. She asked me to come up to the podium. I walked through that crowd in a daze. People were clapping. Strangers were smiling at me. The mayor shook my hand and gave me a plaque with my name engraved on it. She asked if I wanted to say a few words. I hadn't prepared anything. I didn't think I would need to. I looked out at all those faces and my throat tightened, and then I saw them. My family, standing near the back, my father, my mother, my brother. They had come. I don't know how they found out. Maybe someone told them. Maybe they saw it in the local paper. But they were there, and the looks on their faces were something I had never seen before. Shock, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite identify. I spoke into the microphone. My voice was shaking at first, but it grew stronger with each word. I said that this park meant more to me than anyone could understand. I said that for a long time I believed I wasn't capable of much, that I had been told I didn't have what it took to succeed. That I almost believed those voices, but I learned something important, that the only voice that really matters is the one inside you, the one that tells you to keep going, even when everything else says to quit. I said that this park was proof that where you come from doesn't determine where you end up. That degrees and connections and advantages help, but they aren't everything. That determination and belief in yourself can take you places you never imagined. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. People came up to me afterward, shook my hand, asked questions about the design, asked if I was taking on other projects. Business owners wanted to hire me. The local newspaper wanted to do a feature story. A regional architecture firm said they wanted to talk to me about opportunities. In one moment, everything changed. I went from invisible to seen, from useless to valuable, from nobody to somebody. And through it all, my family stood at a distance watching, not approaching, just watching. Finally, after most of the crowd had dispersed, my father walked up to me. My mother and brother stayed back. He looked older than I remembered, tired. He stood there for a long moment, not saying anything. Then he extended his hand. I looked at it. This man who had called me useless, who had refused to help me, who had turned away when others humiliated me. He wanted to shake my hand now. Now that I had proven myself, now that I had value in the eyes of others. I didn't take it right away. I let him stand there with his hand out, waiting. Let him feel just a fraction of what I had felt all those years. Then I took it, not because I forgave him, but because I had already won. His approval didn't matter anymore. He said, "You did good, Daniel, real good. I didn't know you had this in you." I looked him in the eyes and said something I had been wanting to say for years. I said, "I always had this in me. You just never looked." He didn't have a response to that. He nodded slowly, dropped my hand, and walked away. My mother came up next. She hugged me, said she was proud, but her eyes were wet and I could see guilt there, regret maybe. She asked why I never told them what I was working on. I said, "Would you have believed me if I did?" She didn't answer. She just hugged me again and whispered that she was sorry. My brother shook my hand, didn't say much, just congratulated me and left quickly. I could see it in his face. He didn't know how to process this. His entire life he had been the successful one, the golden child, and now his useless little brother had done something he never could. After they left, I walked through the park alone, touched the benches I had designed, walked the pathways I had drawn on paper years ago in my cramped apartment, stood under the pavilion that existed first in my imagination, and I cried. Not sad tears, relief, release. All those years of carrying their words, their judgment, their disappointment. I set it down right there, left it in that park, because I didn't need to carry it anymore. I had built something they couldn't take away from me. I had become someone they couldn't define. The useless son had created something useful, something beautiful, something permanent. The local newspaper ran a feature on me the following week. The headline read, "Self-taught designer proves passion trumps pedigree." They interviewed me in the park, asked about my journey. I told them everything, about working at the warehouse, about teaching myself architecture, about the years of studying alone while everyone doubted me. The story went viral locally, then regional news picked it up, then a national design blog. Suddenly I had opportunities I never dreamed possible. Architecture firms reaching out, invitations to speak at community colleges, requests to design other public spaces. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. My email was flooded. The nobody who stacked boxes had become the self-taught architect everyone wanted to talk to. But the sweetest moment came a month later. I was featured in a design magazine, a real one. Glossy pages, professional photography, a 3-page spread about my work and my story. Someone sent a copy to my father's construction office. I know because my brother called me. He said Dad had it on his desk, that he had shown it to clients, that he was telling people his son was an architect. I laughed when I heard that, not cruel laughter, just ironic. The same man who called me useless was now bragging about me, taking credit by association. It should have made me angry, but it didn't. Because I realized something important. His opinion of me had never been about me. It was about him, about his limitations, his fears, his inability to see value in anything that didn't fit his narrow definition of success. And I had broken free from that. I didn't need his validation anymore. I had given it to myself. 5 years have passed since that park opened. 5 years since I stood at that podium and felt the weight of every cruel word, every dismissive look, every moment of doubt finally lift off my shoulders. A lot has changed since then. I run my own design firm now, small but growing. I specialize in community spaces, places that bring people together, projects that matter beyond just aesthetics. I've designed parks, libraries, community centers in 3 different states. I've hired a small team. Young designers, some with degrees, some without. I don't care about their credentials. I care about their passion, their vision, their willingness to work hard for something they believe in. I still live in the same town. I could have left. Plenty of opportunities in bigger cities. But I stayed. Maybe because I needed to see it every day. That park, my park, the physical proof that I wasn't what they said I was. Or maybe I stayed because leaving would have felt like running, and I had spent enough of my life hiding. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was visible, on my terms, living the life I built with my own hands, my own mind, my own refusal to accept their limitations as my reality. My relationship with my family is complicated. We talk occasionally, holidays, birthdays, surface-level conversations about weather and work. My father tells people about my success now. Introduces me as his son, the architect, with this pride in his voice that makes my stomach turn sometimes. Because where was that pride when I needed it? When I was 17 and breaking apart at the dinner table? When I was 23 and being humiliated at my brother's wedding? It's too late for him to rewrite history, too late for him to pretend he always believed in me. But I've made peace with it. Not for him, for me. Because holding on to anger would have given him power over me, and I had worked too hard to take that power back. My mother sends me articles about architecture sometimes, pictures of buildings she thinks I'd like. It's her way of saying she's sorry without actually saying the words. I accept it. Not because it's enough, but because I understand now that people are limited by their own fears, their own failures, their own inability to imagine something beyond what they know. She couldn't see my potential because she had stopped seeing her own years ago. That's sad, but it's not my burden to carry anymore. My brother and I barely speak. I think my success makes him uncomfortable. He's doing fine. Good job. Nice house. 2 kids. The life everyone expected him to have. But there's something missing in his eyes when we're in the same room. Maybe it's the realization that the script we were all supposed to follow was just one possibility, not the only one. That the brother he mocked, the one he saw as less than, found a path he never had the courage to look for. I don't take pleasure in that. I just recognize it. But here's what I want you to understand. This story isn't really about them. It never was. It's about me. About the moment I decided their definition of me wasn't final. About the 2 years I spent in silence, building something they couldn't see. About the risk I took when I submitted that design, knowing I might fail publicly, but refusing to let fear make my decisions. It's about discovering that the word useless was never about my abilities. It was about their inability to recognize value in something they didn't understand. I think about that 17-year-old kid sometimes, the one sitting at the dinner table, hearing that word for the first time. Useless. How much it broke him. How deeply he believed it. And I wish I could go back and tell him what I know now. That in 5 years he would design a park that thousands of people would enjoy. That in 10 years he would run his own firm. That the people who couldn't see his worth were simply looking with closed eyes. That their blindness was not proof of his invisibility, just proof of their limitations. If you're listening to this and you've ever been called useless, worthless, not good enough, I need you to hear something. Those words say nothing about you. They say everything about the person speaking them. People who truly believe in their own value don't need to diminish others. People who are secure in themselves don't need to make you feel small. When someone tells you that you can't, what they're really saying is they couldn't. When someone tells you you're not capable, what they're really revealing is the boundary of their own imagination. Don't let their limitations become your ceiling. You are not required to accept anyone's assessment of your worth, not your family's, not your friends', not society's. You are only required to decide for yourself who you want to be, and then have the courage to become that person. It won't be easy. There will be nights when you're exhausted and doubt creeps in. There will be moments when giving up feels easier than pushing forward. There will be voices, internal and external, telling you to stop dreaming, stop trying, stop believing you could be more than what they see. Ignore them, not because they're trying to hurt you, though sometimes they are, but because they genuinely cannot see what you see. And that's okay, you don't need them to see it. You just need to keep building it. I didn't become an architect to prove my family wrong. I became an architect to prove myself right. To show that quiet kid who loved to draw that his dreams weren't foolish, that his vision mattered, that he was never useless. He was just surrounded by people who had forgotten how to dream. And once I proved it to myself, their opinions became background noise, present but not powerful, audible but not important. So here's what I want to know. Have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? That you weren't smart enough, talented enough, worthy enough? And what did you do with that? Did you believe them? Or did you use it as fuel? Drop a comment below and tell me your story. Tell me about a time someone doubted you and you proved them wrong. Or tell me about a time you're still working on proving them wrong. Because I guarantee you, someone reading this needs to hear that they're not alone. That the path from useless to unstoppable is real. That it starts with a single decision to stop accepting other people's stories about who you are and start writing your own. Never let anyone define you, not because they don't have the right, but because they don't have the vision. Only you know what you're capable of. Only you can see the blueprint of who you're meant to become. Build it, even if you have to do it alone, even if you have to do it in secret. Even if it takes years and nobody believes in you, build it anyway. Because the day you finish, the day you stand back and look at what you created from nothing, you'll understand what I understood in that park 5 years ago. You were never the problem. Their perception was. And perception can be changed with proof. So become the proof. Become undeniable. Become everything they said you couldn't be, not for revenge, for freedom, The freedom that comes from knowing you define yourself. Nobody else, ever.